I always say poetry.
Okay, shut up. We're starting.
Okay.
Fuck.
All right. The
Grumpy
Dead Man's Stone
bitch.
podcast. I know, right? Grandpa's grumpy off his meds. He hosts a show one time. Now he no.
These are the meds.
Oh, damn.
Dead
We're
Man's Stone
taking off.
podcast. Your host, Mr. Deadman, SK Becky. Our guest tonight, the one and only Ryan Sechrest. Ryan Sechrest on the
Yay!
show.
Oh man,
Ryan
I've been
Seacrest.
looking forward to this. I want to know what it's like working with Simon Cowell.
Ooh.
Well,
Oh, my.
it's good, but it's not nearly as good as working with Paula Abdul. So yeah,
Mm.
Well, she's got the good shit.
Yeah.
Obviously.
yeah, she's got.
Now-
Speaking of meds, yes, for sure. There's definitely a
Now-
bright side to working with Paula.
And what's in her cup? I mean, that's vodka, right?
Was it? I think it was vodka, and then
Vodka
she'd just nibble on the
and-
pills
Vodka
sometimes.
and
Yeah.
vodka and
It's not
Oh,
an
just
it's not an
vodka.
or it's not an or issue. It's an and issue for sure.
Oh, yeah.
As it should be.
and pills.
Yes.
Okay. Well, man, where do we go from here?
That's
I mean,
a very
we have
good
the best
question.
guests ever. Ryan Seacrest on the show. How do we top this? No, but for real, Jason Seacrest. How's it going, man?
Man, it
You
is
doing
going
all right?
really, really well. How are things with you?
We are doing fan-fucking-tastic. Which, by the way, I have to give props to SK and Becky. They held the fort down. I was away. I was busy. I had to deal with some drama in the basement. My midgets went crazy. They got into the quote sugar. I'll just call it sugar for legal reasons. And they're freaking wild. Okay.
Wow.
Corn-
Now, what
cornstarch.
when you say midgets, what exactly do you mean?
Little people, like
Vertically challenged?
You better
vertically.
Jesse, you need to read from your lawyer statement to answer that question.
Vertically challenged.
Vertically challenged, and I make sure
And
that
not
they
just
are,
humans.
they might be pig people.
Oh.
Does that count?
I'm taking notes for my next horror story as we speak. And it's not about your midgets, by the way. It's about a writer who agrees to go on a podcast.
Oh,
Oh,
clever.
Burn. But yeah, that's why I was gone.
Well, that
No, it
was
wasn't.
explained. That
No,
was
it
explained
wasn't.
perfectly. We all know exactly what you're talking about,
Wait.
and now we
He's
can.
full of shit.
Well, how am I full of shit, Becky?
Because I know why you were gone.
Why was I gone?
Well, it made
Shopping
the paper.
for bull balls.
Oh, dumpster diving for bull balls.
No.
Um,
No.
What?
Okay, why was I gone? Well, why was I gone, Becky? Miss Know It All.
You were in jail, weren't you?
Wait.
Yeah.
How do you know about that? How do you know about that?
What?
Because it made the paper.
What?
Oh, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Why haven't I
Okay.
seen
You
this?
know, do you know what you want me to read the article? Can I read the article?
Oh,
Yeah,
please.
just
My
read
God.
it. Just read it.
What have I gotten myself into?
Oh, this is great, Jason.
It's not. It's worse than you
Texas?
think because almost everything is
Yeah.
easier to get into than out of.
Oh, very true.
Especially with us. Aren't you sorry you met me now? No.
Okay, just go ahead and read it.
Okay.
Come on.
Texas butthole licking bandit has
Oh,
finally been caught
Wait,
with a name
butthole,
like the
butthole tickling, butthole licking.
licking.
I'm sorry.
I mean, damn it, tickling. See what you did?
I didn't do it.
It's tickling, not licking.
Okay.
With a name like the Texas butthole tickling bandit, it doesn't take any imagination to know what he does after breaking in. Fortunately,
They made it
he
to
has
the
been
paper?
apprehended by the police.
Son of a gun.
Identified and caught by police in the early hours, he managed to elude captors for 3 weeks. He has given male residents in the area a really tough time with his assaults, which totaled a dozen homes by the time he was stopped.
They agreed.
He
They
used salt?
agreed.
No, he didn't use salt.
You said assault. Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
Assault.
Mhm.
Ass
Get it?
assaults.
Assault.
Well, yeah. This, look, my attorney's telling me I shouldn't really disclose much, but let me just say that's not the full story. Okay.
Oh,
Maybe later on.
I'm sure not. I'm sure it involved the
I have
midget.
no doubt.
So let's do the announcements real fast and get into this.
I detect a deflection here.
Yeah, just a little.
Don't deflect. Hey, Mr. Sechrest, Jason
Yes,
Sechrest.
I'd like to know, Becky, what website was this article on?
Well,
Deadmanwatch.com.
Yeah.
They have a track.
On. Hold on, I'm looking.
I mean,
Oh,
I regularly read CNN, and I don't recall seeing anything of the sort.
It was a local
They're
news
so
story.
focused. They're so focused on Orange Man right now. They're not even covering me.
That's
they can't
very
cover
true.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. This is from KEGLiHeart.com.
Oh fuck! It's local. Oh god damn it! How they get that? So okay.
I'm Googling as we speak. Texas butthole bandit has been caught. Wow.
Yeah, let me tell you something.
See, I'm telling you.
Let me tell you.
The butthole bandit though sounds like somebody who steals buttholes.
Becky,
no, this is the Texas butthole tickling bandit.
Becky,
y'all are forgetting.
This article, Becky, is from. I know it's March, but it's March of 2017.
Shush.
It's taken a while to catch him.
Yeah.
It's distortion.
Okay.
Wait. I'm not supposed to disclose that either. Damn it. Son of a gun.
Jesse, you got to be aware of these damn doorbell cameras now.
I know.
Doorbell cameras.
Got me there too. Licking doorbells.
You know, doorbells are the gateway drugs to tickling buttholes.
I know firsthand. And let me tell you something. I got into that cell because a little B&E. I'd break in, right? You give a little tickle. Hey, they're all cool with it. B&E with a tickle. And the dudes are all cool with it. But someone got caught. He didn't want to explain to his wife what happened. It's like, well, man,
Getting into that cornstarch too early in the night, that'll do you.
All right. Okay, let's. All right, Mr. Sechrest, go ahead and shout out your Patreon.
Sure.
You got a Patreon page. What's going on with that?
I do. It's at patreon.com/Jason Sechrest, which you'll never get to, because it's hard to spell. It's hard to spell the name. But I think Becky has been lovely and kind enough to place a link to it directly in the description on the YouTube. So if you just want to click the link, it should take you there.
Wait, our Becky?
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Well, let's go ahead. So, what do you get to be becoming a patron? What do
Well,
you get?
that's a very good question. So I guess I should introduce myself. My name's Jason Sechrest, and I've been a published writer since I was 15 years old. A lot of that started with an intense love of Stephen King, and for all intents and purposes, I currently write a article for King's publishers at Cemetery Dance Publications called "What I Learned from Stephen King." It's a regular column that explores the spirituality, the life lessons, and the wisdom in King's horrific kind of work. I also happen to write short horror stories of my own, and the short horror stories of my own you can read on the Patreon page.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So they get access to your short stories. Okay, that's pretty cool.
I also put the link to the patron in the live chat, by the way.
Oh, awesome. Cool. Awesome. Very cool. Thank you.
Very neat. Okay, and some framing before we get going real fast. There's a few things. One, if you are a member of the Dead Man's Tome fan club page or fan club group, there's a caption contest. If you participate in the caption contest, there's 2 of them. You get a free ebook. So check that out. The other thing is, and of course, we'll talk about that on the show here. Talk about the captions. There's a quick announcement. We have a new anthology coming out. Mr. Deadman Made Me Do It. Sin stories. They're like, think of like I don't know, Jason, if you know about Slender Man. You heard about the girls that like stabbed this other girl in the name of Slender Man?
I don't think I did.
Yeah.
So there's, of course, we all know there's people who do psychotic things in the name of like fictional characters or just, whatever. So the whole premise of the Mr. Deadman Made Me Do It is all these short stories are kind of around there's this, Mr. Deadman is like, I guess, in their head, tell them to do things. That should be fun. We'll see how crazy that gets. But check all that out, deadmanstone.net. Go there for all the details. With that said, I think now we can get going. All right. I know you already introduced yourself, Jason Sechrest. How long have you been writing?
Well, like I said, since I was 15 years old. So, I read Stephen King's It when I was a kid, when I was like 10, and it made me immediately want to be a writer. And I actually ended up sending a letter to Stephen King along with the first short story that I ever wrote when I was 10 years old. And he was kind enough to write me back and said that he was very embracing and very enthusiastic. And he said, this is really great for a 10-year-old, obviously. I mean, it was a story. I sat down hoping to write the great American novel, and I ended up writing, a story that was about 2 pages long at 10 years old. So he was very kind and very sweet to write back. But he said, never stop writing, which always stood with me. And I think a big part of that encouragement that I received really made me sort of go down that path and keep writing as much as possible. And within the next 5 years, I got hired as a staff writer for a magazine. Do you remember magazines? Do you remember what magazines used to be?
I do.
Oh God! Now that you mention it, yeah.
There was a magazine in the early 1990s called Femme Fatales that interviewed the women of the horror, science fiction, and fantasy genre. And that's what I got hired to do when I was 15 years old, was to do interviews with Linda Blair and Dee Wallace Stone and a ton of girls who were on late night Cinemax. And that's sort of where my career took off from there, from working for Femme Fatales at 15.
Did you interview Brink Stevens?
I lived with Brink Stevens. Brink Stevens became one of my. Brink Stevens is one of the biggest horror film icon actresses of all time, if only for the fact that I think she's been in something like 350 films or something insane. But she was actually
with her. She was
Yeah, when I turned 18, I moved to Los Angeles to live on the streets. I was determined to make it. I was like, I'll live on the street if I have to. I'll do whatever it takes. And I ended up calling when I got to Los Angeles. I called all of the actresses who I'd ever interviewed. And, you know, you can imagine Linda Blair and the like were a little busy to call back. But Brink Stevens was not. Brink Stevens was not. And she kind of took me under her wing and said, I can't believe that you've done this and that you're living on the street. And, you know, I'd interviewed her many times for the magazine before. And she said, why don't you, you know, sleep on my couch for the night? And that turned into me being her roommate for about 3 years. So we lived together for a long time. She became like a surrogate mother to me while I was there. Like she was really amazing. And I met a lot of really great people through her and was able to kind of continue with little odd jobs here and there for writing. So it was great.
That's awesome.
Okay. Having lived with her, I mean, there has to be something that you know that no one else knows about, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the craziest things that people don't know about Brink Stevens is that she's incredibly psychic. She would tell me things that would happen. She would warn me of things that were going to happen to me when I left the house in the morning, and I'd say 4 times out of 5 they would happen exactly as she would say them. She also reads tarot cards. I mean, she really has a great gift for being able to see the future, and that's definitely something that a lot of people don't know about her, I think.
Wow.
Okay. Interesting. Now, having lived together for 3 years, I'm sure you guys had your ups, your downs, maybe even had moments where, I don't know, you had to lean on each other for comfort or, you know, for emotional support. What is one of the craziest times like living together? Craziest moments?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. You know, it really wasn't that crazy. It was more like, you know, when you go over to your, well, it was like one big slumber party. It's funny that she's in movies called Slumber Party Massacre, because it was like we literally would just stay up until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning watching horror films together. I mean, she's as much a fan of the industry as she is a part of the industry. So we would just stay up watching movies until all hours of the night and eating popcorn, and that was the time that I spent with her. So
oh my God, she's in the movie with the all-time best title ever.
Can I guess which one it is?
Sorority Babes and the Slime Ball Bolorama. Oh my, it's the best title in the history of filmmaking.
Wow. Yeah, it's true. It's true. It really is.
Man.
And she's in a whole lot of other movies too. She wrote and produced, I think, a movie called Teenage Exorcist that was great. Jan Michael Vincent recently passed away, and she did a movie with him that was a straight up drama based on a Edgar Allan Poe story. It was called The Haunting Fear. I think it's based on Premature Burial. But yeah, I mean, she's you name it, she's done it.
She was also in Replicator.
Yes.
Yes.
She was Diana Scarwood's body double in Psycho 3, I think it was.
Okay. Man. All right. One last thing about her. I mean, the whole stream's on, you know, all about her. But okay, what about the best heart-to-heart moment? Because we talk about, I was, you know, pulling for crazy. But what's the best heart-to-heart moment?
It was, you know, actually, I think the best heart-to-heart moment that we had was probably when I was moving out, because she really did kind of take me under her wing. And then 3 years later, you know, I mean, we were living in the Valley, and it's for anybody who lives in Los Angeles, they know it's difficult to get from the Valley to, you know, Hollywood and LA and West Hollywood. And that's sort of where all the action was. And I was a young guy who wanted to move to West Hollywood and be in the middle of like the crazy gay scene and all of that. So I 3 years later, I was ready to go. I was ready to move, and it was tough. It was really tough because she had really become like a surrogate mother to me. And I just remember her saying, you know, you can always come back here. Like, this place is always open to you, and I'm always, you've been the best person to live with that you know, she could have. She hasn't lived with many people. We're both kind of private people who don't like to share our space with other individuals, and we've just really got along. Like, we just really became best friends just very, very quickly. And it was sort of like the end of an era when I left, and she just really said, you know, anything you ever need me for, I'm always here. So, and she has been. I mean, I saw her as I moved from Los Angeles to the East Coast. I moved to the New York, New Jersey area about a year and a half ago, and I saw her the week before I left. So it's, she's a great friend still to this day.
Oh, that's
so
good.
Glad. That's awesome.
Man.
Wow. That's great.
I mean, your writing career started with a note. I mean, you got a response from Stephen King.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah.
I mean, that must felt like you were touched by one of the gods.
Yeah,
right?
it felt pretty cool. It was pretty much like, it felt like being anointed, you know. I always
we
don't
mean like Michael Jackson touch, though.
No,
not,
oh my Lord,
not quite like that. No, but it was. I mean, it lit up. I tell you what it did is it lit a fire under my ass, because he said to me, you know, I will, and also not in the way that Michael Jackson. But
on the way where I was tickling butts.
Right, not quite the same fire. It did really, you know, because I had just written that one story, obviously at 10 years old, and it wasn't even a story. It was not much of anything. And I sent it off to him, and in his response, he said, feel free to send me anything else that you write. He said, I won't be able to respond all the time in the way that I am now, but he said, please feel free to send me anything that you have and anything that you do. So I raced off to my typewriter to write the next story and the story after that, because I wanted to get it to him. So it definitely lit a fire under me. I remember the second story that I ended up writing was about a cat who is overly protective of its owner, who is a nerd. So the cat starts killing off teachers and all these kinds of people who are. And then I thought, you know, and I didn't get, obviously, you know, he said I wouldn't be able to respond to all of them, so I didn't get a response to that one. So I thought, okay, you know what, it wasn't brutal enough. I need to make the third one. I need to make the third one really brutal. So the third one, the next story I wrote was about a group of people who go on a deep sea fishing trip out into the Gulf of Mexico, and there's a cannibal on board, and the boat breaks down. Of course. Okay. Yeah. So I thought, man, he's gonna love this one. I thought he's gonna eat this one up. So it did.
Literally.
It really, yeah, absolutely, with a spoon. So it really got those creative juices flowing, and I just really started thinking, like, wow, what can I do with this? Like, and it's sort of never really stopped. I did the thing that happened with Femme Fatales and with interviewing people like Brink Stevens. That really, it was a different kind of writing. Obviously, it was journalism that kind of took off for me at 15. So it took a long time for me to get back into my love of Stephen King and my love of writing horror fiction and all of that. And that really came about because I became friends with somebody on Facebook named Richard Kismar, who is he's the owner of Cemetery Dance Magazine, Cemetery Dance Publications, and he publishes a lot of limited editions of Stephen King's work. And
amazing man.
Yeah, he's wonderful and an incredible writer in his own right as well.
Yes.
He's a New York Times bestselling author as well. So I noticed that he was doing this sort of chronological read through of all of King's work, and I thought, well, I'd like to do that, and I kind of got on the bandwagon with it, and I started noticing that for all of the scares that King packs with a punch into his horror, there's also a lot of wisdom and a lot of life lessons that can be found in it. And I thought this would make a really interesting column. So I sent it to him and I sent it to Brian Freeman at Cemetery Dance. And all it took was 1 or 2 columns, I think. And they were sold. They said, you can do this. You can write this. And we'd like for you to write it for us. So it's been about 15, it's been about 15 columns now that I've written for them. My most recent one was on Stephen King's It. And they usually end up being more about how his stories affected my life or what they taught me. So I end up weaving my own life into the stories, and they've really been amazing. I've gotten this incredible handful of readers of my own from the column that have been great, and they were the ones who said, you should write more. You should write your own fiction. And so I ended up trying my hand at that a couple years back, and sent that into Cemetery Dance, and they ended up taking that as well. That's going to be published in the next issue of Cemetery Dance magazine. So it's been a great road so far. I've got to say, I've just been really blessed. I've been really, really blessed from the beginning, and I've just had a lot of really great people help me along the way, I think.
I have to say that I have not had any personal interaction with Stephen King. Although we do get confused a lot because the initials are similar, but he has, everything I've heard about him, though, he seems to be one of the most generous people, in fiction.
I think so. I think he's one of the most down to earth guys. I mean, the fact that I took a trip to where he lives, to Bangor, Maine, a couple years back, less than a couple years back, maybe a year and a half ago. And I just remember being so struck with how rural it really is. Like, I mean, it really is. It is a small town. And he has never, gone on and decided that he wants a mansion in the Hollywood Hills. I mean, he has a mansion in Bangor, and he has quite a gorgeous one near Sarasota, Florida, I think, on the Keys. So, but he's really, to me, he continues to strike me as a very down to earth guy. I agree. In all of the interviews that I see with him, it seems like he's just a salt of the earth kind of guy who would much rather go to a baseball game with a friend than a dinner at the fanciest restaurant in New York City.
Yeah, I like that about him.
So many of the ones that are, really, really great, and, they remember where they came from, and like Stephen King and Jack Ketchum and Ray Garton and Richard Chismar, and they're just, oh yes, I love him, absolutely. And they're just I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like you do, kind of guys, and I respect that about them so much.
And Becky, speaking of remembering where you come from, it's funny that you live in Indiana, because I grew up in Indiana. I grew up in a really small town in Indiana called Columbus.
Honey, I have you beat there.
Really?
I grew up in Henryville.
Wow.
Ooh, what's that?
Wow.
Can you find it on the map?
We had a 4-way stop. We don't even have a stoplight.
Okay.
Oh hell! I grew up in a town. I didn't even grow up in a town.
I grew up in a trunk.
SK, but that's because you're old.
It wasn't actually before the state became a state. It wasn't still a territory. There are no surviving witnesses to that.
How's Moses? Is Moses a grump?
How old are you, SK? How old are you, actually?
Older than I am, and I'm 46.
Wow, you're older than I am. That's crazy.
Let's see. You were born in what, 79?
I was.
Who, me?
Wow.
Oh, I was born in 72.
Okay, there you go. I was born in 79.
Well, I had graduated high school by then. Let's put it that way.
Jesse, how old are you? Jesse's the baby.
I'm like 83. So
Jesse sounds
You
like a baby.
lying?
no,
You're
that's true.
lying?
Can I
I'm the
guess by
youngest
your
one here.
voice? Can I guess by your voice how old you are?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
Keep in
gonna,
mind, I eat a lot of burgers, so a lot of
I'm,
cheeseburgers.
I'm
Not
You're
gonna
your
full
guess.
of shit.
I'm gonna guess that you're between 32 and 35.
Oh, it's like more like 36. But yeah.
That's close. That's dang close.
Yeah.
There you go.
36.
I'm feeling like I'm 38 though. I need to change my diet.
Oh, for God's sake.
Probably have
Oh,
salads
man.
and shit.
Oh man, that's the worst. It's true. I'm about to. I turned 40 this year, and I'm like, the older that you get, you just can't eat the same things that you. And I love food. I'm like, I've been a foodie my whole life, so it's tough. I'm like, fuck it, I'll just get old and fat. It's fine. I don't care.
I really want to get that from seeing the image that I have of you here. I wouldn't really get that at all. I mean, hell, you look like you're taking care of yourself.
Well, I
Yeah.
try, but it's tough. You know, I ended up losing almost 30 pounds last year because I wanted to look really good I got married in December and I wanted to look really good for the wedding. Between
Nice.
between December and now, I have gained all 30 pounds back. I actually lost in a year. I'm like, that can't be healthy. That
Married
you
life,
gain
man.
30 pounds back. that you gain
It's
that back in
better.
3 months. I'm like, come on now.
It's better than
You gain it
gaining
to lose.
30 and 10 more.
Well, now that's true, Becky. That's true. It is.
The years are, pretty young still.
Yeah,
You can lose
I've got
some more.
time.
You can
I've got
always
time.
lose.
Yeah.
You can always lose weight. Yeah, you can always lose the weight. Don't worry. You'll lose it. So okay, talking about Stephen King. Let's talk about because you mentioned how his work has like I guess multiple layers to it. There's like a spiritual element
Oh, yes.
to Stephen King's work, which I don't think I've really picked. But yeah,
Really?
kind of.
You've never picked up on that?
Well, I mean, not
I
necessarily.
Well, I
I
mean,
guess not necessarily.
there, in The Stand, there was a, very explicit good versus evil.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
um,
Very true.
in other stories, there's evil and then people
Oh,
opposing evil, not necessarily forces
the
for
myths.
good.
Um, yeah. I mean, okay. So, when you in your columns, do you also personal life and how the story your life as well? So tell us a little bit about that.
Well,
Uh,
I mean, I think that I always find something in almost every one of his novels. They almost read to me now that I'm older and I'm reading them, because I read a lot of them when I was a kid, obviously, but now that I'm sort of rereading them, I keep finding that they're almost like Aesop's fables, that they always seem to have some kind of moral or story to tell beneath them. Like it seems like Carrie talks about the dangers in giving your power over to your religious convictions completely. And the same sort of dangers are whispered about in Firestarter in giving all that power over to the government. The idea that you could just go as simple as, sometimes that is better. The idea that the things that we love, that we don't want to let go of, those things that you can take it to a metaphorical sense of, obviously we might not, take our child and put them in the ground and have them come back as zombies, but how many of us hold on to memories or circumstances that are best left in the past? How many of us continue beating ourselves up over something that we've done in the past? Or how many of us continue to have certain experiences haunt us? I think the best example I could give is Stephen King's It. I mean,
yeah, I was thinking about that.
To me, that story,
a book, right?
that story is so completely filled with nuance and different layered sort of meanings, and that was the one that hooked me. I mean, I was 10 years old when I read that book, and it completely changed my life. That's actually the most recent column that I wrote for Cemetery Dance. It was called What I Learned from Stephen King, It and Other Childhood Demons. And there's a lot of correlation to bullying in that book. There's a lot of correlation to fear being the greatest enemy. So that's I wrote an entire column on it, but it's to me that's always going to be one of my favorites and one of the ones that stands out as holding the most wisdom.
And fear is a great enemy. I mean, you definitely get that in that book because it was pretty much preying on the kids. Like it would be whatever the kids would fear.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you fear?
Me in particular?
Yeah.
Everything, man. Everything.
Podcasts.
Podcasts now. Now I didn't have
It's a new fear. Yeah.
But now, yeah.
He's afraid of me.
Very
absolutely.
Oh, trust me. By the time we're done, you're gonna want to come back on. It's family.
No, you guys are awesome. You guys rock. No, but
he's afraid of me though.
I'm
wow.
Well, how could I be afraid of you? You're the sweetest. No, it's
I got him fooled. No.
Sounds like
That's why I was silent over here. Like, Becky, sweet. I don't know anything about that.
Shut up.
Yeah, no, I'm scared of everything. I really am. That's why I write horror stories of my own, because it helps me sleep at night once I get them all out on paper.
Okay.
Do you ever scare yourself in your writing?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I mean, yeah. I'm not even gonna go into that, but yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of explore. I think as a horror writer, I think you have to kind of explore the darker. It's funny. The Stephen King column kind of helps me to explore the lighter side of things and the lessons that I learned from things. But my own horror stories, writing those kind of means that I have to explore the darker recesses of my imagination and the parts of yourself that you might not really want to look at very much or dive into. And I think that's what's fun about it, is to really kind of dig in there and say,
well,
how sick and twisted can you get?
Well, that's a good question. How sick and twisted can you get? I mean, one of your stories had a boat where, deep sea fishing, and there's a cannibal on the boat.
Yeah, there you go.
So how far, and one of your stories, have you gone?
I'd say, I really can't. This is going to be tough, because the answer is definitely the next. It's the story that's going to be published on my Patreon page on April 1st. It's called Lifeguard, and I can't really explain what is sick and twisted about it, because it would just ruin the whole surprise for anyone. But it's
now. Of course, I believe a little bit of a tease. Is there some sort of hint, some sort of nibble? Like let's say.
I can tell you that the story is about a 13-year-old boy who is being bullied relentlessly by his alcoholic stepfather, and he meets a friend, a very unlikely friend who he thinks might just be able to save his life.
A zombie.
You never know. It could be
a lifeguard zombie.
Lifeguard zombie. Now, if that's
Lord, Jesse.
If that's not the story, then I might actually be writing down this idea, lifeguard zombie. That's
crack-addled midgets.
A bad idea.
Crack-addled midgets. They might actually help. Okay.
But I will tell you, Becky said that she wanted me to be prepared to read an excerpt from one of the stories. So I tell you what I'll do is, because she talked about doing a reading from one of my What I Learned from Stephen King columns, and then reading from my own short horror fiction. So I'll save my own horror story for later. How long is the show? 2 hours?
As long as you want, man.
An hour and a half.
As long as we want, hour and a half, 2 hours.
We can go ahead and do the reading now. I mean,
Okay, Jesse
Yeah.
wants to hear this. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do the column first, since we were talking about what
Yeah.
I learned from Stephen King. I'll do that first, and then later on I'll go. We'll talk a bit, and then if you don't mind,
Yeah.
I'll read a quick excerpt.
Sounds like a
from
pretty good pace.
stories. Okay, so this is the most recent column. You're okay? Is the sound okay? You're
Yeah.
sure
You're
The
good.
sound is good.
everybody can hear me all right? Okay.
I
So
can hear you.
Muting
this
now.
this is called What I Learned from Stephen King, It and Other Childhood Demons. No book has had, and feel free to interrupt if you want and ask a question or anything, but no book has had a more profound impact on me than Stephen King's It. For one thing, It is the book that introduced me to Stephen King. In 1990, I was 10 years old, and like many kids my age, I was entranced by the clown in the storm drain I'd seen on primetime television. Every kid at school was talking about Stephen King's It the night after it aired, but like most things that capture our imagination as children, it faded from the periphery of playground conversation within a day or so, only to be replaced by more common mainstays like debating who should be the villain in the next Batman movie, or when we would get another Gremlins or Ghostbusters. I, however, found the story much more difficult to shake, perhaps because for me, its impact wasn't just about the clown. It was about the losers and how very much I felt that I could identify with them. It was about the town in Derry in which they grew up, a place eerily like my own hometown of Columbus, Indiana. It was about kids who were bullied and adults who looked the other way. It was about fear. No, it defined fear. I don't know how at 10 years old I knew that, but I just did. I knew that there was something much more spiritual beneath the surface of the story, something that not only defined fear itself, but explained it, where it came from, how it manifests, and at what price. It seemed to me that the story of Stephen King's It, as portrayed by the miniseries, was about so many things. You can imagine my shock at how many more things the novel itself was about. When I raced out to pick up a paperback copy that weekend at our local bookstore, I would eventually acquire the hardcover as well. The novel was about prejudice. It was about racism and homophobia and misogyny and child abuse. It was about the creation of the universe, or what King referred to as a macroverse. It was about the forces of good and evil and what role they play in our lives. It was about bridges. My God, was it ever about bridges? Have you ever noticed how many references there are to bridges in It? From the Billy Goat's Gruff nursery rhyme from which King derived his inspiration, "Who's that trip-trapping on my bridge?" to the bridge from which Adrian Mellon gets thrown into the river. And least we forget the bridge that separates the children's library from the adults' library in Derry. It is about the bridge we walk from childhood to adulthood and the monsters we must face along the way. I first read it in 1990, and I read it again in 2017, and readers of my column will remember past installments where I had touched on this. In one entry I wrote of the day that the losers helped me to fight one of my own bullies as I lugged the 1,138-page novel across his jaw. In another, I detailed the letter I wrote to Stephen King after having been introduced to it and the response he sent me that changed my life. So I had mentioned it many times, but what I yet to do was share what I've learned from this particular novel. And since that's the name of my column, I had supposed I'd better do just that. To do so, I think it best to share with you what I learned from it when I first read the novel in 1990 and how it affected me again when I revisited the novel 27 years later. I'll never forget the shock on my teacher's face the first day I brought it with me to school. Even as a paperback, the thing looked thick enough to be a doorstop. Tim Curry's gruesome face glared from the cover at every person who passed me by as I held it. And as terrified as I was by Pennywise, I also felt some strange sort of protection just holding it. Doesn't look like a very nice story, my teacher sneered, looking down on me as I sat reading the opening pages about the little boy in the yellow slicker racing his newspaper boat in a rainstorm. "Aren't you scared to read that?" she asked. I was scared, all right. I was scared of a lot of things much more real than Mrs. Beecher could possibly know about. Things waiting down the hall after class or outside for me at recess. Things waiting around every corner in my own neighborhood. That's half the fun, I smiled up at her. You going to read that whole thing? She persisted. I am, I said with confidence. Well, she sighed, if you finish it, you can do a book report on it for extra credit. I did finish it, but I never wrote that book report. So, Mrs. Beecher, here goes nothing.
Remind me, what grade were you in?
I was in 4th or 5th grade. I think I
Okay.
started it in 4th grade and I finished it in 5th grade. Yeah.
Wow.
10 years old.
That's an interesting time. Not to segue too much, but I remember when I was in 4th grade, I was reading Anne Rice, like Lasher, out of all books, and trying to explain that to, which practically had like a lot of adult scenes in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Trying to describe that to a teacher. Anyway.
Yeah. What did your teachers say? Did they see you reading it?
They saw me reading it, and then you're supposed to give like an oral report to the teacher, like a 101. And
God.
I even told her, like, man, this book there. I don't know if you read the last year, but there's a I think it's the first chapter. The chick is like in the bathtub with her water. Lasher's coming in and eating her out and all this stuff, and the penis is doing this and that. I'm like, so I'm saying this. I'm saying this to the teacher. And she just looked
Never
at me.
mind.
I don't know. I must have got lucky. I must have got lucky with the teacher that I had.
She says
because I was just like,
she said A+, A+. Yeah.
She must have been. I don't know if OxyContin was being handed out that much when I was a kid. I don't know if pain pills were a thing or being abused back then, but she just seemed to be like, all right.
Maybe she was into it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say you got lucky with the teacher, does that count?
Let's just say,
Jesse, we need to talk after class.
Yeah, seriously. My goodness.
Hey. I was a little pervert back then too, so it's all right.
There you go.
Okay. All right, let's go back to your column.
Okay. It taught me a whole lot of important life lessons as a child, but the chief among them, the most important of all, and the one that I have never, ever forgotten, is this. If Pennywise takes the form of whatever it is that you fear the most, then there's nothing to fear but fear itself. Fear is the only real enemy. Fear doesn't just keep us from living our truth. It eats the shit for breakfast. It eats away at the truth inside of us, the ability to love and the willingness to dream. It looks like the friendly clown at your best friend's birthday party, but if you engage it, it will swallow you. Fear gnaws from the inside out with razor-sharp teeth. Fear is what cages the bird until it no longer yearns to be free, until it forgets it can sing because it has forgotten its own song, until it mistakes captivity for security, mistaking its prison bars for protection, and finding comfort watching life go by from a lone perch of newspapers and worn dusty swing. Children are the best lie detectors in the world, and I think as such, they're also the best truth detectors. Even as a child, when I read it, my truth detector was sounding loud alarms, blinking a bright red like Pennywise's nose, all of which seemed to say to me that what I was reading was gospel. It was true. It might not have been real, but it was true. If there is such a thing as a dark force in this world, whether you call it Satan or just negative energy, that dark force is something that is sustained by us, feeds off of us, feeds off of the fears that we choose to give into. If there's a single reason I am consistently drawn to it, it is because a piece of my soul seemed to understand somehow that Stephen King was telling the truth. As he is often quoted as saying, fiction is the truth inside the lie. it might not be that there's a Pennywise the Dancing Clown, even at 10 years old. I realized that. But I also knew that what Pennywise represented was very much real. There was an almost biblical tale being told in the passages that discuss the macroverse, in the story of how Pennywise came to be. There's nearly a big bang which hurls Pennywise towards the earth. Meanwhile, the turtle, a force of goodness who represents the opposite energy force that is Pennywise, cannot really interfere, because if it did, it would take away our free will to face our fears and fight against the beast. I was scared of Pennywise as a child, but it was most of all because of what Pennywise represented, the authenticity inside the artifice that made it ring true. That is the second thing that Stephen King's It taught me, the power of metaphor. I don't think that I'd ever really thought about metaphor or knew the word at 10 years old, but you can bet that I knew it, understood it, and internalized it by the time I was done with the book's 1,138 pages. That you could use a character like Pennywise to symbolize something so much greater. That you could use a story to tell a profound human truth is what made me at 10 years old want to become a writer. Never before had I so completely understood the power of the written word to both entertain and teach a lesson, to tell a story, and in its very in its very telling, shift one's perspective and make an impact upon one's life. The whole idea of it just seems so grand. It wasn't just a clown. It was Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, whatever your greatest fear. Yeah. That's what Pennywise had the power to become. And what could be scarier than that? To a 10-year-old boy, only one thing could be scarier than that. The bullies. The ones at school and the ones at home. Those real-life horrors that live right in our own backyards, the ones that at such a tender age have us looking constantly over our shoulder or taking the long way to class so as to not be pummeled, beaten, or bruised in crowded hallways that echo with mockeries of laughter. It made me feel like I wasn't alone. That is, I suppose, the third thing I learned from the novel. I grew up in a very small town, and if I wasn't the most picked upon kid in my school, well, then it must have been a hell of a close race. It helped me to realize that the town I was living in was not unlike other towns, and that the kids in my town were not unlike other kids. There were those who bullied, those who got bullied, adults who tried to help, and adults who looked the other way. It made me feel like I wasn't the only loser in the world. With every page I turned, it was as though Stephen King were forcibly grabbing my arm and saying, "Hey, listen, kid, you're not alone. There's others like you out there, 7 others, in fact, right here in Derry. You see? We all fight the same fight, and I'll tell you something else, kid. Childhood is hell, but childhood is short.
Yeah.
There's a light at the end of this tunnel, and when you get out of it, when you reach the other end of that bridge between the children's library and the adults' library, man, you're going to swing. You're going to knock them out of the park. So just hang in there a few more years. And hey, look, some kids, they got it even worse than you." That was true also. It gave me perspective. I might have been bullied every day at school and called a faggot so many times the word rang like an infection in my ear. But I wasn't being sexually abused at home like Beverly Marsh was. I may have had a bully pull a switchblade knife on me once.
Oh, man.
But he didn't start to carve his name into my stomach like Henry Bowers did to Ben Hanscom. I thought, if these poor kids can survive, then I can face another day. And I did. So I'll leave it at that for now. There's a whole so then there's the adult section of the story of when I reread it as an adult 27 years later. But I'll leave it at that.
You had me captivated throughout the whole thing.
Wow.
That was
Oh no,
well
me
put
too.
column. Yeah. Wow.
Thank you.
Has he seen this?
Yeah, he has. He, you know, you mentioned how much you love Richard Hismar, and Richard he really is. He's such a kind man. He was nice enough to send it along to Steve, and Steve wrote back to him, and he forwarded the email to me. Steve said that he thought that it was very. He thought that it was. What did he say? I always forget the two words he used: thoughtful and something else. I don't know, but he said that the thing that stuck with me the most was he said that he was really glad that the book was able to give me comfort as well as quite a few scares. So I was like, that's really cool. I was like, that's really great. But yeah, he has read it. He's read a couple of the columns that I've written for Cemetery Dance, and he's been
good, because he should definitely read that.
Yeah, he's been really. I have to say, he has been, to me so far, just really, like since I was a kid. Like I said, he's just been really warm and embracing, and I think I'm lucky with that, because I think actually, if I'm being honest, I think that it's a fine line that you have to walk with Stephen King, because I don't know that King is crazy about the idea of people devoting their careers to writing about him. You know, I think he actually takes some issue with that sometimes. So that's another reason why I really kind of pushed myself to start writing my own horror stories after these were being published by Cemetery Dance. I thought Stephen King wouldn't want you to base your whole career on writing off of him. He would want you to write your own horror stories and see if you could get them published. And thankfully they are. So
That's true.
I've been really, really lucky. He's been so embracing of it. Yeah. So thank you for listening.
And no problem.
It was really, really amazing. I would love to have a copy of that.
Oh, for sure. I'll send it to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you shared that.
But it's definitely.
You felt comfortable to share that with us. That's great.
Well, at this point, you know, there's been two columns that have gotten the most attention at Cemetery Dance, and the first one was the one about the letter that I wrote to Stephen King and the response that he sent back that changed my life. And then the second one, which seems to have gotten an even better response, is this one about it. And you mentioned feeling comfortable enough to read it to you. The reason why is because at this point, I've been asked to actually read it to groups of teenagers at different places. I read it at a library last week here in New Jersey to a group of teenagers. So it's been so well received, and I've been asked to kind of read it aloud to different people in different ways, and I'm kind of used to it at this point. So thank you for.
And I'm sure it resonated. I'm sure it resonated with certain people. I mean, I felt something. Well, I felt something hearing it. I mean, first off, this is the first time we ever talked. I wasn't really aware of how much pain you've gone through, and because of it is what it is. I mean, your sexuality, and you seem like you're very open about it, and it's like, it's unfortunate that people are assholes and mean and homophobic in that way.
But it's a part of. I think that the reason why the column has done well is because it's not just. I think everyone can relate to it on one level or another. I think that being bullied is
it's fairly universal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it manifests in different ways and on different levels for different people. And, the second part of that column about, me rereading it at 27 was really about an opportunity that I found to kind of stand up for myself. And kind of, I realized that I was allowing myself to continue to be bullied as an adult, and that I had kind of adopted some sort of self-hatred from all of that I went through as a kid. Because I mean, really, you can't possibly be, you can't be bullied and called all of those things. It's a coping mechanism. Yeah, you can't be called all those things for so long and not come out of those years with some sort of fundamental subconscious belief that you are wrong or that you are bad in some way.
Yeah,
and I
that's
think
true. That's
and
true.
I think that what I found is that from rereading it again, I realized that the metaphor sticks with the second half of the novel. When they come back as adults to fight against the beast one last time, they are really fighting against the abuse that happened to them as children. They are fighting to stand up for themselves in a way that they weren't able to back then. They're fighting to stand their ground in a way and heal the wounds that happened to them as children. It's very much it's got a thematic core for sure, man. I mean, the book is really an amazing look at how I think Stephen King once said in a lecture, you can't be an adult in this or any society until you are finished with your childhood. And it's really about those kids going back as adults and growing up and standing up for themselves and standing their own truth and standing their ground.
Well, I think you've explained a lot to Becky about me.
Why is that?
about not being done with childhood.
There you go.
No. Okay, now there's a question. I'm sure that's on people's mind, but they're not saying it, not asking it. Now, how does the come on, you know where I want to go. Okay. How does the infamous train actually is more like a, they call it a gangbang scene, but it's more of a train, one at a time. That thing when they're, how does that is that them trying to overcome their fears?
I tell you, I don't know because I didn't write it, but I have a theory, and my theory about that is that the kids each end up using whatever it is that is considered to be their Achilles heel or their weakness in a way to fight against it. Richie, or not Richie, Denborough, Bill Denborough ends up using the stutter and he thrusts his fists against the post and still insists he sees the ghost that he's been given to conquer his stutter. He uses that to conquer to conquer Pennywise. Eddie Kasprak uses his inhaler at one point, which he's constantly ridiculed for, and he's considered this baby over, and he ends up using that as a weapon. I think that maybe for Bev's quote unquote weakness, for lack of a better word, I don't mean it in that way, but I think for lack of a better word, her issues have stemmed from the fact that she's a woman, and her issues have stemmed from sex and from having sex taken from her in such a violent way by her father. In sexually molesting her. I think that this is her opportunity to take back her power over her sexuality and say, that's not where I lost my virginity. I didn't lose my virginity in a rape incest moment. I choose to lose my virginity to these people who I love, and through that act of love, it binds them together. That's my theory. It seems like each of them have to use what they're ridiculed for or what their quote unquote weakness is supposedly, to realize that their weakness is not a weakness at all. To realize
that's pretty good theory, though.
That it's actually the source of their power. What everyone has called a weakness is a source of power for them. So that's my theory. I don't know if it's true or not, but that
is interesting. I mean, that's better than I heard it explained to me that the boys have to lose their virginity to become adults, but I'm like,
I don't know.
What?
No, that's not true.
I think it's deeper than that.
I think so. I hope so.
It is.
I hope so, because
sure
it's a weird scene. It's a weird scene, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely. I remember the first time I read it as a kid, being like, "What in the world? This was not in the miniseries."
Why wasn't it?
Good luck explaining that one to your teacher. I don't think he had the same one I did.
Yeah.
Just age difference alone.
Go on.
Yeah, you should hear my daughters talk about it. Was a defining moment in my daughter's childhood as well, right up until the ending, and that pissed him off so much.
The miniseries.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're like,
yeah, I agree.
it's a goddamn spider. What the hell?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
All of this,
It's
and it's a goddamn spider?
it's
Come on.
it was quite a letdown. It was quite a letdown of a climax. One of the things that I don't like about that is that people seem to relate that whole second half of the miniseries, the second night. They can't think of anything else but the spider. So they always say,
Yeah.
the first half of the miniseries was great and the second half was horrible. But I love the chemistry of the adult actors in the miniseries. I love John Ritter and Dennis Christopher and Annette O'Toole and John Boy
Yeah.
Walton. I mean, all of them, sitting together at that table at the
They were
Chinese
cast
restaurant.
perfectly for
I
that, in
just,
my
I,
opinion.
I just think they have the best chemistry ever. I really enjoy watching them as adults. The only thing that really fails, in my opinion, about the miniseries is that ending with the spider. It's a clunker of
Okay,
an ending.
y'all cannot say the S word anymore.
What?
I have to
Spider?
sleep sometimes.
What's
I
wrong
have
with
to sleep
spider?
some. Stop! No.
Spider.
Becky, I noticed, Becky, that you had a lot of spiders on your Facebook
It's
page. I
because
wondered.
Oh
she's
my God, that's because
she's
my
an
brother
arachnophile.
tags me. My brother tags me in spider pictures all the time, and now he's got various other friends of ours doing the same thing. I'm terrified of them.
Oh my gosh!
Like,
Wow.
I'm talking. If I see a spider and there's a chance that it might could get on me, I'm talking naked, beating the hell out of myself, on fire, screaming, running down the driveway. Yeah, no, just no.
Well, the
No.
next story I write, it'll have to be about a spider and a girl named Becky.
Oh,
Making a
Yep.
note on that.
That'd be.
Becky,
You know what? And I
spider.
think. Okay. I think that's okay, to go more into about your writing. Okay.
yes.
We talked about it a little bit. So you have some short stories. Now, what's I guess one of your favorites? Start there.
Probably well, I have two favorites. I really think that I really hope that people will like the one that's coming out in Cemetery Dance Magazine in their next issue. I don't know when that's supposed to hit. I think it's supposed to be in the next few months, but it's called Orange Grove Court, and that's the first thing that I really wrote when I decided I need to do something other than just write the Stephen King column. I need to really kind of go back to what my childhood dream was of writing horror fiction, and that was my first sort of stab at it, so to speak. And I was amazed that at first try that they were willing to pick up the story, and I was also amazed
First
that
try.
yeah, I mean that they picked it up immediately, and I was also amazed that after that I don't think that I wrote anything worth a damn for a really long time. Like it was months and months of trying to kind of capture whatever it was that I was able to get done with that story that I just couldn't do again. But it did finally come back around again with the first story that I put up on Patreon, and that's up there now. It's a story called "The Road That Takes You There," and that has been called horror with heart by a lot of different reviewers, and I'm glad that they're calling it that, and I'm glad that
How did you earn that?
I don't
Horrible.
know. I don't know. It was there's a reviewer of a publication called Nightworms, and she also does reviews for Cemetery Dance, Sadie Hartman, and she was really kind. She gave it 5 stars. She was the very first person to review it, and there were a few people after that who continued to give it 5-star reviews on Goodreads and on their blogs and that sort of thing. So I'm really happy that people like that. And before the end of the show, I'll read a quick excerpt from the beginning of that story. And if people like it and they want to hear the end of it, then they can go to the Patreon page. There's a link to it in the description on YouTube here.
Definitely. You know what? Let me let SK or Becky jump in here. You guys have any questions about his fiction writing?
Other than I want to hear it.
Ah, do you want me
And hint hint nudge nudge. We have an e-zine that we do
I saw that.
every month, and April is my month. And if you wanted
Really?
to
Your
send
month?
a story, it's my birthday month.
Oh.
Wow. I might have to do that. A
I
story
would
about
love to see one.
a
But-
story
about
about a
spiders.
girl named Becky
Who makes friends with spiders?
No,
and the
she does
Yeah.
not.
and the spider that she finds crawling up her bathroom drain.
Oh my god.
Oh, she turns, looks at it's there, but it's gone. Then it starts crawling up her spine.
Well, it's gone.
Jesse Deadman.
It's gone until she wakes up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and she realizes that it's in her mouth. So it's
I was,
Laying
oh my
eggs
god,
in
I
her
would
spot.
die.
Laying eggs under her skin.
well, it's laid them in her esophagus, probably.
Aha.
That's where it'll
See,
hatch.
you're going throat. If I was gonna write it, I would go somewhere else. Legs, somewhere else.
Well,
Ears.
now that's
You're thinking ears, aren't you, Jesse? Yeah.
Damn it.
wow.
Yeah, ears, totally ears. That's exactly
Wow.
right.
You
My
are
belly
so
button. It was my belly button, SK. Come
Oh yeah,
on.
totally belly button. No,
I see.
no other orifice. I'm not thinking of any other orifice at all. No.
Says the
Nothing
butt
warm
tickler.
than I'm supposed-
Well, no, my thought with the throat is that she's so paranoid about the eggs in her throat, and she's so sure of the fact that it's laying these eggs and that they're going to hatch at any moment, that she just decides to start tearing at her own throat and tries to cut them out with a knife as much as she can. And really, there's no spider in there. It's not laid any eggs. She's just
Paranoid.
crazy.
Ooh.
Becky's just crazy. We know this about Becky.
Well, yes, we do.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty graphic.
Sounds like a pretty good story.
Yeah,
I like
if
it.
I thought that there were spider eggs in my throat, you could damn well guarantee I'd be doing something about it.
I bet. You try to drink some kind of acid or something to try to,
Bleach.
yeah, bleach. There you go. That would
all
do it.
this, all this about spiders, but what about roaches? I mean, roaches are much worse than spiders.
They're
just
gross, but
yeah.
I can smush them. Spiders are sneaky.
But spiders don't really want to fuck with you. Do they?
Dude,
Yeah,
have you
yeah, they do.
yes.
Yeah, they do.
I mean,
if you go to swat one that's on the wall, they jump
Don't-
at you.
well, he's trying to kill it. Yeah.
I can't believe you're not
If you
using a
can't-
shotgun.
I mean,
Don't think I
Spiders
haven't
operate-
thought about it, but I got told that if I put holes in the wall, I'd have to go sleep outside. And there's a lot more of them outside than there are in.
Nobody argues with the person holding the shotgun.
Oh, you want to bet?
I did.
I mean, that's kind of the point.
I did just end up writing cockroaches into a story. So for sure, I'm with you on the cockroach thing.
yeah, I can't stand
Yeah,
roaches. I
they're
think roach,
they're
I would
gross.
bomb the whole
They're
house.
gross. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to squish one of them. I am afraid to get too close to a spider because logic tells me, and I know this is wrong. Edmund Stone, I'm gonna hurt you. He's in the chat and he says spider.
But
Okay.
spiders are good at take care of like roaches. I mean, you need,
But so is a can of Raid, Jesse.
yeah,
I
but
mean, if
can of
you have a
Raid, like,
spider, logic says to me that it's gonna get on me. I'm gonna be dead. I'm gonna pass out. It's gonna climb all over me.
Well, only
I'm
if
gonna
it's
have a heart attack and
poisonous.
die.
Only
It
if it's
doesn't
poisonous.
matter. I would have a heart attack and die.
Well, okay.
Guess
That's
what you're getting
It
for
might-
your Guess what you're getting
how
for
many
your
spiders are
birthday.
venomous?
I am not. No, you cannot do that to me because my birthday's on Easter.
And
Oh, Easter Sun. Your birthday's on Easter Sunday? For real?
Yeah,
No way. Interesting.
it's the
Well,
21st of
happy-
April.
happy birthday, Becky.
Please don't mail me spiders.
I think I think I know just what to get you.
Oh shit.
raid.
Okay, here's a fact for you, Becky. there's over like 40,000 species of spiders, right? But
Jesse.
only a few are actually venomous. Okay.
I don't care. I'm not worried about the venom.
She's not
I'm
worried
worried
about that.
about them getting on me.
Okay.
Listen, Jesse, come on, give her a break. Phobias are not rational. You can't talk her out of it.
No, just have to
And you
expose.
cannot. I don't care how many subs we get. I am not holding one.
Yeah, the man makes a very good point. That's very true.
You know what? They say it's like less than 30 out of that number. So like it's like
Yeah, and
less than
29 of those are probably in Australia anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then one that's not in Australia is probably in my house.
There you go. Makes
And it's probably underneath this toilet seat. And when I go to pee at 2 a.m., it'll bite me in the butt.
And it's gonna lay eggs. No, it's gonna tickle your butt.
No.
Go inside, lay eggs.
It's not gonna. No, it ain't either.
Shitting spiders.
Well, if you had indoor plumbing, Becky, you wouldn't have this problem.
Damn it, SK. You're not supposed to tell everybody.
Okay. Before we go too off topic here.
That's too late for that.
I think. Are you still there?
Hello?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I lost everyone for a second. Are you there?
I know.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
We're here.
We like went into a time warp for a second.
Yeah, I know.
It's the midgets. They're pulling on the cord.
I see.
They're at work again.
They're hungry.
So
I guess
go ahead and give us a read. Go ahead and give us a read of your story.
All
Let's
right.
do that.
So
Please.
this is called The Road That Takes You There. 1. My God, her face. What happened to her face? 2. The road stretched out before him in miles of endlessness. It was an old country road, one he had driven countless times before, and surely would drive countless times again. He had driven it in his youth as he drove it now as an old man, the road that took him into the city for work each day, and the very one that would bring him home again each night. Stalks of corn, also seemingly without end, flanked both sides of the road, mile after mile. He smiled to look upon them, remembering a simpler time, when he was knee-high to a grasshopper, when the stalks had seemed to tower over him. Days when he would run through the rows, hide in them, breathing in the sweetness while taking momentary shelter from the sun. It came as a great shock to George Tinker the day he saw a break in those vast stretches of yellow and green, a brief reprieve that he was certain had not been there before. The fields seemed to part as the Red Sea had parted for Moses, that great magician of ancient days, and in its place rested what would come to be the sum of all George Tinker's fears. A tiny church with a graveyard tucked neatly behind it. That wasn't there yesterday, Martha, George said, slowing his car at the sight. The passenger seat next to him was empty. Must be new, he concluded. George often spoke out loud to his late wife, Martha. He preferred to pretend she was still with him. Merrily, George rolled along, passing it by without thinking much of it at first. It was only later, passing it again on his way home, that the first of many questions would arrive. Who built it? He wondered. In all his years, the road had not changed, and for that, George was grateful. Now there was something new, something unfamiliar. That thing doesn't belong there, George Tinker shouted out his car window at the church the next morning. Had anyone seen him, bald but for the brush of gray around his ears, they might have laughed at what in that moment looked like the very definition of a grumpy old man. But no one had seen him. No one was there. no one ever was. Doesn't belong, he humphed to himself, as if to underline the point. He continued his muttering rant as he tooled on down the road. Now, Martha, you were right when you said there's a place for everything and everything in its place, and that thing is out of place. Meh. The whole world is upside down today. So I'll leave it at that. That's all you get. That's all you get for now.
That's a
Damn it.
tease. That's a tease.
That is a good tease.
So you have to
And
find out what it is that he's this place that he's driving by over and over again. You have to join the page, and you can read it for it. You can join the page for as low as $1 a month. $1 a month, you get a new short horror story every month, and then there's other tiers, other levels where you can get the audiobook version also along with it, or you can get exclusive afterwards or anything like that. And by the way, Becky, that story is the reason. I just remembered the reason why I decided to read that one instead of any other one is because it was inspired by an actual tiny church with a graveyard tucked neatly behind it that I found last summer while driving through the back roads of Indiana. And it was one of the creepiest places that I've ever seen. I took pictures of it, but I took pictures from my car because I was so scared. I didn't want to get out. It was that creepy.
Where was it?
There was a sign. Oh my gosh. It's in Greenwood. It's in Greenwood, Indiana. And
let's go there.
Road trip.
It's called, I'm pretty sure that it's called, well, see, now I'm giving things away, but,
okay, don't.
Yeah,
don't.
I can't give anything else away. Yeah, but it's,
you can tell me later.
Yeah, I'll tell you later, but it is creepy as hell. And so there's like for the tier on the Patreon page where you get the exclusive afterwards and that sort of thing. There's pictures of the actual place that inspired it to go along with it, and the story of how I discovered it.
Nice.
And what I started thinking about and everything that went into it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Do you believe in ghosts?
I do.
Okay. Do you believe there's a way to contact ghosts?
I think there probably is. I'd rather not know how. But
do you think you've seen a ghost?
No, you do.
Yeah, I think I definitely have. I think that there's different times. I've lived at different places in my life, and I think that there's certain places that I've lived in where there have been other people, other entities living there. And it's just
like a ghost family. Like you have the ghost mom, ghost dad, ghost kids.
I have a ghost cat.
Side thing. A ghost cat? You have a ghost cat?
Ghost cat.
I'm not kidding.
Really?
Every time I go to, when I go to bed.
You killed one of your cats, Helena. You killed one of your cats.
Oh my God!
Another idea for a story: ghost cat. I'm writing this down. Ghost cat. All right. This has been a
ghost
very
cat, the
productive
spider
evening.
hunter.
Yeah.
No.
This has been a productive evening for me.
This was a long approach to go to this Ouija board. Do you think they work?
I can't. I don't see.
Listen,
listen,
oh God! I know what he's going to tell you.
Listen. Here's what I think. I think there's a reason for everything, and if there's a reason for everything, then
Parker Brothers.
There's a reason why.
Yeah, right.
There's a reason why that thing goes to whatever letters it's going to, and is trying to spell something out. That whether it's a ghost or whether it's just energy, that there's a reason for it.
Here's the thing: how can you ever be 100% certain the other person isn't manipulating it?
That's a very good question. We
gotta take it to that church. We gotta take it to that creepy spot. That don't go there hill and test it out.
I highly, highly recommend not going at night. There's a as you'll read on in the story, there's a black wrought iron fence that surrounds the entire place, and there's a huge double gated entrance into the cemetery where overhead it spells out in big black wrought iron letters, Salem.
Let's go there.
Oh,
Cool.
Let's go there.
What's wrong with going at night?
Not kidding you. Well, at night, actually, when it's a full moon, it actually rises up right directly dead center over those letters.
Yeah, let's go.
It's
go.
it's a sight.
And I'm still waiting for why not go there at night?
Well, you have to read the story.
Oh, come on.
You have to
We
read
gotta
the
have
story
Jason,
to find out why you're not going to go there at night.
You need
Let's
to
go
come
there.
visit, and I need to take you to Waverly.
What's Waverly?
Ooh.
Waverly Hill Sanatorium over in Louisville.
Oh, yeah. One of the now
That
that's
is
seriously
that's
creepy
the old
shit, man.
Yeah, that's the old tuberculosis hospital in Louisville.
Psych hospital. Yeah, psych hospital too,
I'm not
right?
doing any of that. I'm not doing any of that.
Oh my God!
I told Becky.
Pictures of it's amazing.
I told Becky we got to do a show there. I'm talking like IRL streaming, like on our phones or whatever. Be like, here we are. We're going to be streaming, looking for ghosts here. And I'm acting all tough right now, talking huge game, right? Let's go there. Come on. But I'm be the one who's like screaming like a little girl.
You're going, Becky, I'm not walking down the hallway. You're going first.
I'd be like shirtless. I'd be taking off my shirt the whole time.
And I'm going to be bringing things to throw down hallways and shit to startle you.
Now, wait a minute. I see that there's, I just realized you have a chat room. I didn't even realize that. Look at Edmund Stone is in here.
Mm-hmm.
And, wow. Hi, Edmund.
Probably not the most active chat room of all the
Hi, Edmund. Now, there you go. Hi, Edmund. So, yeah. Okay. That's interesting. That's really cool. You guys have a chat room and everything. It's a great show.
We do.
I can't thank you guys enough for letting me come on.
It's no problem.
And to read for my stuff.
Before we wrap up, I don't know if you have to go right now. Before we wrap up,
not at all.
I want to do the caption contest.
Oh, the caption contest. All right. Let me get those pictures
up. Try to include the Facebook fan group into the show. Come on.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and Jason, I have a book that I want to send you. One of actually I have two. It's by the same author. We at Deadman's Tone published one of his stories. He is a brilliant writer, and I think you'll really, 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 really love his writing.
What's his name?
His name is Chris Miller.
Chris Miller. Okay, I will check it out. Chris.
I'll send them to you.
That's great. I would love to read them.
You'll have to message me later and give me your address, and I'll mail them to you. I'll mail you copies of them.
Awesome, for sure.
He would love to send them to you.
Now, Becky, the big question is: Are you joining the Patreon page?
Honey, I already did. You were talking, and I did.
You're amazing. Thank you so much. That's so cool. I've got. Oh my gosh, you did! Oh, that's so funny.
I told you I did.
I'll have to send you something really cool in the mail too. Just for that. Just for that.
You know, Becky, if you join the $5 a month, you get subscribed to the Spider of the Month Club.
Oh.
SK. Damn it, SK.
I gotta live up to my name.
My gears are slowly turning. I'm thinking of a new perk for my Patreon page. Maybe $5, $15, a spider on Becky.
No.
That sounds like a special offer to me.
Joining for real.
Yes. Okay.
Don't you dare.
Okay, so let's for that.
All right. The captions.
All right, here's the first image.
So wait a minute, what's the caption thing? What am I doing here? Tell me what's going on.
The caption contest.
Okay, it's a caption contest. We took a couple of pictures and posted them in our Facebook group.
Okay.
And told them that, the best caption, whoever can come up with the best caption that fits the picture wins a free ebook.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
So have you narrowed it down to the top 3 or something?
To me?
Yeah.
Somebody.
Let's see. Which image are you looking at right now?
Some jerk off in a Mexican restaurant.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, that asshole. Who the fuck is that asshole?
I don't know.
Let's
I
see.
cannot pick a winner. You just cannot make me do
Okay.
it. So no.
Okay, let's see. I think honestly, okay. Let me just read. Charles Lane, is it Lane or Lean?
Lynn.
Today, Texas. My friend always texts me when I'm not home, wondering where I'm at. I mean, that's not really related to the picture. I mean, I get it. I kind of like Ralph Moody's though. I'm not putting that thing in my mouth. It was just in my ass. Your loco essay. Okay. I think that one takes it. I think that one takes it. That one wins it.
All right, I will type it in there.
Ralph Moody win for the win, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then yeah, that was a weird dinner. That motherfucker just put a spoon in my face for real. I'm just like, what the fuck?
The waiter did.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck is he putting a spoon in my goddamn face? Like, that's what happened.
Why was he doing that?
I don't know. I think they were trying to set me up for a prank or something.
Okay, I
Why
have
do
to
you
see.
have
I have
the
to see
hat
this
on?
picture. Where is this Facebook page?
Oh, hold on.
It was
you want
on
me
the
to add you
stream.
to it? Hold on.
All right, I'll put it back on the
Becky
stream.
will send it to you.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Hang on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm chilling.
And I also put you in the group.
I took that sombrero, by the way. I took that home.
I
stole
see
it?
it. I see it. I see it. I see it. I see it.
Is that not
Oh, you're
great?
adorable. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
Aw.
Yeah. Apparently, you're not
I
supposed
think
to take.
it looks like you're like a toddler being fed pureed peas. Open for the airplane.
It kind of does.
It does. It does look like that. You can see that.
He looks like you look like you're gonna say, "Don't make me punch you."
Yeah, that's what the other people at the table thought was going to happen. They're like, "What?" Like they thought I was going to like restrain him or something. I don't know.
What does your shirt say?
Oh, River City Ransom. It's based on an NES game, a Nintendo game. Very fun game, actually, by the way.
How long ago was this picture taken, by the way?
Damn. I was working at Devereaux at the time.
I was gonna say
I don't know.
You can't see the scars in this photo, so it must have been a while ago.
Oh God.
Yeah, right. Like maybe 10 years ago. I want to say.
Really?
No, maybe like 8 years ago. We'll go with that. That's about right. Sounds right. Yeah, about 8 years ago. They had a good bar there. Yeah. You can see in the background.
Oh, good.
The hell with the food on the plate and the spoon in my face. The bar was good.
Actually, the food of this place is actually kind of bland. For Mexican restaurants, like...
really?
Yeah, I mean, their fajitas were like totally unseasoned. It was like eating bland meat. Like, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Was it run by English people?
No. I think they're trying to go like English people though, because they're trying to. I don't know if you're familiar with a chain called Gringos, pretty popular down here. I think they're trying to emulate that. I just say that because their menu focuses heavily on their margaritas and less on the food, and the food quality is kind of like piss poor.
You know, you drink enough booze, you don't care what it tastes like. The food.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Is that kind of like if I drink enough, you're gonna be good looking, kind of thing?
Yeah.
Like
that.
Yeah. But there's other Mexican
food goggles.
The thing is, around the same area, there's Mexican places where you can get like $2 margaritas, and they're good, and they have all these flavors. Like everything you can imagine. And I was like, one day we're there.
Why would you want to ruin your tequila?
No, I just went around the world. I told them I want a flavor tour. I want to flavor all these things and don't stop. And they're like,
why would you want to ruin your tequila?
With flavors?
I'm not much of a tequila guy. I mean, I need something in there, like lime or something.
A worm?
Not a worm. I haven't had worm tequila. What?
Oh, really?
Spider
No,
tequila.
what was that?
Spider tequila.
No.
Is it true if you eat the worm, you get like psychedelic property? I mean, if you freak out or something? I
You
heard
asking
that.
me because you think I know, or
y'all haven't
I
tried
might
the
know.
No? Oh, weird. Okay. I guess next caption. Kind of bled that one. I think next caption would be even better.
Next caption. There we go.
Mm-hmm. We got SK.
It's not me. Actually, this is my brother. It is actually my brother and his ex-wife.
Is it really?
And one of my nieces and one of my daughters.
Wow.
It's you.
No, it's not me.
Is this from a family reunion?
This was no, my family
Mother-in-law?
my family reunions are not this calm. We were doing a short film about Mother Goose stories as if they were crime reported by crime TV reporters, and this was Little Jack Horner.
Nah. Okay. Okay, that's cool. I can see that. Now, do these captions get it though? I don't think they got that reference.
What did they say?
Well,
Becky, you want to read them?
Sure. Damn it. The first one is, see, that's why we called the spousal abuse center. He eats all the damn pie all the time. You think the fat bastard would have enough pie for all of his wives, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The next one is, whatever is in this meatloaf is divine. Bloody fucking divine.
Okay, that's interesting.
All right.
Okay.
That's a little grandpa humorish, but it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next one is, wait, that's not ketchup, is it?
Okay.
Wow. The next one is, Billy cut himself a piece of strawberry pie.
That's kind of on the nose.
Yeah.
The next one. I've got Kool-Aid, Smile, and some My Dog. Goddamn Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay.
What?
What
in the world is that?
I don't even know what that means.
That might have to win just for the sheer bizarreness of it all.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. That's the way I was going with this one.
I don't know what it means, but it's interesting.
I think I might have an idea, but I don't even want to say it because if I'm wrong, it's just gross.
It's gross. Yeah, don't say.
I'm just thinking of the Midol part. Ooh.
Yeah. The next one's about as bad.
What does it say? Oh my God. Oh, when it's that time of the month. Yeah, I'll read it. I'll read it my. Okay. When it's that time of the month.
Oh, for God's sake.
What do you have to do?
Oh, God.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have to. You don't have to. You know what? And you can illustrate her. You could paint her a picture if she doesn't understand. Be like, would you be sucking on my cock if it's bleeding? The answer is no. No, you would. And then she'll say, oh, it's natural. That doesn't matter. That's not what I said. That's not what I asked.
Anthrax is natural too.
Cancer is natural.
Strychnine. Arsenic, I mean.
Well, if I wasn't
gonorrhea is natural
tonight.
I love you.
I think Gear Drury wins this one, hands down.
Yeah, I think so too.
Which one was that?
All right.
The Kool-Aid Smile.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. That's about he was
whatever the hell it means, he wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was on
It means the same thing the second one did, damn it.
Yep, it's just more subtle. More subtle. Okay. Wow, that was a caption contest. Yeah, we got winners. You get books. All right. Well, the last question I usually end the show on is, what is your favorite horror movie? I mean, we could probably sit here for 30 minutes
Oh
talking
my
about that.
God. Can I please talk about it for the next hour? Oh my God. Oh my God. I was just tweeting about this. Like, I couldn't stop tweeting about it. God. You usually, is this a question that you ask of the group or the guest?
The guest.
The
I
guest.
don't want to interfere. But I mean, to me, the greatest horror film of all time is the same as the greatest film of all time, because I think that it broke down so many barriers in cinema, and that is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. I
Oh wow.
I mean, I could talk about that movie for 5 hours. I just really feel like you see its influence in just everything, and everything that comes out that is a thriller or a horror film.
Yeah.
A slash. It created the slasher genre. I mean, and it was so. I was just thinking about how somebody had just asked me what my favorite horror film was on Twitter, and that's the reason why I was talking about it. What's crazy about it to me is that Alfred Hitchcock had just done these huge color, Technicolor, like sprawling epics. Like he had done North by Northwest and Rear Window, and I mean he was at the top of his game. And his movie before that was, you know, Cary Grant and Eva Marie Saint going across Mount Everest, or Mount Rushmore rather,
Right.
in North by Northwest,
right.
and with the cornfields and the plane that comes down over. So everybody was like, after North by Northwest, they said, how is he going to out-top himself? How is he going to do a movie that's even bigger and grander and more splashy? And instead of doing that, he scaled it back completely, went back to black and white, and made a low-budget horror film. I mean,
Yes.
it is just the most
blew
brilliant.
the doors off of
Yeah,
everything.
it's just the most amazing piece of cinema I've ever seen. I can watch it over and over and over again.
And the thing that was really brilliant about him is that he withheld so much visual information and it just ramped up the tension because of what he didn't show you.
Yeah, totally. Totally. He knows exactly what to show you and what not to show you. It's absolutely brilliant. You're right. Like with the mother where you see her, you just see her passing by the window like once in the whole movie, and it just makes that character that much scarier. And I think for me, I enjoy a lot of things. I enjoy writing short horror stories. I enjoy reading Stephen King. I enjoy playing video games. I like all kinds of things. But man, there are few things that I love more than finding that one person who has not only never seen Psycho, but they have no idea what the ending is. If you can find that person and sit there, it is like reliving it all over again. It's so great.
And
it's so great to sit.
We did a show on my podcast, Real Monsters, about the inspiration for Psycho, Ed Gein.
Yes, yeah, and who also inspired.
Good episode too.
He also inspired Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
He inspired. He inspired a whole lot of.
A lot of inspiration came from Mr. Gein.
I'm such a huge fan of Psycho that I like every Psycho movie that Anthony Perkins ever did. I like Psycho 2. I actually love Psycho 2. I like Psycho 4, and I'll watch Psycho 3. I will. It's probably the least enjoyable to me, but I mean, there was when I was living in Hollywood a couple years ago, they were doing a very rare screening in the theater of Psycho 3 at the Egyptian Theater. I was the first in line for that. I mean, I'll watch any of them. I think they're great. I think they're all great, and I think Hitchcock is the master of suspense and horror. And the score by Bernard Herrmann is just unbelievable.
Iconic.
It's actually I just saw for the first time last night. I'd never seen it before. The original version of Cape Fear from 1962, and it was amazing to me. It was
that
away
Mitchum?
with. Yes, with Robert Mitchum.
Yes.
And it was amazing to me how much they got away with in that movie just 2 years after Psycho broke all those barriers down. They're talking, I mean, they talk about rape without ever saying the word, but they talk about rape, they talk about consent. I mean, they show a girl getting a young child like getting completely attacked. It's crazy to me, but it also seemed like Cape Fear was an interesting experiment because as I was looking at who was involved in the making of that movie, I'm sorry, I know you said we have to wrap things up. You asked me about now I'm going crazy at the end of the show. I don't want to talk about myself and my own stories. I want to talk about other people's movies, other people's stories. But it's almost an interesting experiment, Cape Fear, because the director so badly apparently wanted to be like Hitchcock or wanted to make a movie that was Hitchcockian before there was even a word Hitchcockian. 2 years after Psycho, he got Bernard Herrmann to do the score for Cape Fear. He got the editor. He got the same editor who had worked on Psycho and who had worked on, I think, 4 or 5 different Alfred Hitchcock movies. He just surrounded himself with all of Hitchcock's collaborators on his greatest films in order to make Cape Fear, and yet it is missing that like elusive touch of genius that Hitchcock had. I really thought going into it, I thought, well, this is really gonna show you, you know, like if it's. I was kind of hoping because when I watch Psycho, I often think Bernard Herrmann, who did the score for Psycho, I almost want to credit him as a co-director because the score is so great in Psycho, and it's so perfect that I can't imagine the movie without it. And I thought, well, what would happen if you kind of took all of those masters and all of those people who are his greatest collaborators and put them on a film without Hitchcock that's also a thriller and has a strong director? And it's just not the same. It's great. Cape Fear is a great movie, but it's no fucking Psycho, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
I heard, and maybe you could tell me if you've heard this too. I heard that for the shower scene, that the blood in the water was actually Hershey syrup.
It is. It absolutely is. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's crazy. It's totally chocolate syrup, and I think that they also originally. I think that Hitchcock's original vision was to do the scene silent, was to do it without at all. Too. And there you can find that on YouTube. You can find a silent version of it where all the sound goes off and you just see it without it. But it just wasn't working when they were in the editing room. I guess that it just wasn't playing, and he finally brought Bernard Herrmann in to do the part of the score that was the cutting sort of sound of those shrieking violins that are it's just brilliant. It's like classical music to me. It's just beautifully done.
Well, I have said in the past many times that I think that film scores are the modern age's classical music.
They are. They really are.
Oh yeah.
I agree. I'd rather listen to Bernard Herrmann any day than Beethoven. That's for sure. I mean, that's just me. But there's nothing wrong with Beethoven. I love Beethoven too. But I'd rather listen to the score from North by Northwest and pretend that I'm being chased by spies. It brings out the child in me. Listening to Beethoven just brings out the pretentious ass in me. Both of whom are alive and well.
But yeah, that's true though. Like a good score can make or break a movie. I mean, you gotta have it. I mean, the music changes the whole experience.
It really does.
Just does. But yeah, thanks for sharing. I mean,
Wait,
bring it back on again.
I have to hear before we go. What are your favorite horror movies? Because I want to see if they're like mine, or if they're also on my top 10 list, or what.
My favorite horror movie is The Notebook.
Oh, for God's
sake.
Okay, I just did a spit take. I just spit out my water.
No. I like my
He
favorite
is
horror
not
movie
right.
is Halloween, the Rob Zombie version, the best version.
Really? Is that
Just
true?
Jesse
joking,
Deadman.
joking.
Oh my god.
And I know a lot of
Jesus.
people who like that movie. I'm
No,
not.
no.
I'm
I'll
not here
give
to
us.
judge.
I'll give a serious answer since Jesse seems incapable of
No,
it.
I said it before. Halloween, the
Okay.
original
Yeah.
Halloween. That's one of my
Amazing
favorites.
movie, amazing movie. And I just watched a couple weeks ago for the first time. I finally got to see the most recent one with Jamie Lee Curtis, and it's man, it's a great piece of work. It's wonderful. I
I
love.
haven't seen that one.
So SK, your favorite?
Alien.
Oh my God, that's my number
Ooh,
two.
yeah, that's a good one.
That's my
That's a
second
good
favorite.
pick.
That's my
I like that
second
one too.
favorite movie of all time. It's my second favorite horror film, and my second favorite movie of all time is Alien. Psycho, Alien, and The
The
Exorcist.
the
My top three.
visuals on that. I mean, it's just the Giger visuals are just astonishing.
Yeah, it's and again, it's such a see. You have a trend here, and I do too. In that it's another movie where the less that is
Yeah.
shown is more. It
Mhm.
really they don't show you that monster in full until quite a ways into the movie, and
Well,
it's another
partly
movie.
because they just had a guy in a rubber suit.
Totally, totally. It's from limitation, but
Yeah,
you know
but
that limitation.
the limitations, it's just true with Jaws. The mechanical shark, sinking and failing so much of the time actually made the movie better.
Absolutely. Great art is often born of those limitations and of being boxed in for sure. It's and it's
Yeah.
that's another one with a fantastic freaking score.
Yeah.
And you talk about the
Mhm.
visuals with that movie. There's one of my favorite moments in movie history is uh, there's a moment towards the end of the movie where she's about to round, it's very close to the end of the movie, she's about to round the corner, and she sees that the alien is around the corner, and so she backs up against the wall. And as she backs up against the wall, there's this strobe light, there's this strobe effect
Hmm.
that happens
Mhm.
where you just see her head, she's dragging herself against the wall, and you just see her head being dragged against this wall with this blue and white strobe effect that if you watch it in a darkened theater or a darkened room, everywhere around you is just bright lights all over.
Yeah.
It
Mhm.
brings you into the movie. It's like the movie comes out of the screen at you. It's just I couldn't agree more. Number two for me is Alien.
Yeah, that is a real good pick. Oh man.
Becky,
Yes, sir.
your favorite
I would
horror
have
film?
I would
Oh,
have to say the original
yes.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, you are a sick one.
Oh,
You are a
how'd I
sick one.
Mm,
know?
man, talk
That's
about
definitely in my top 20. It's
talk
great. It's an
Mhm.
amazing movie.
almost a zero budget movie.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, really.
you know, I'm so glad that we're living in an age where you've got these, remastered and uh, sort of Blu-ray and 4K and all of this, where you can touch things up, because Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a movie that desperately needed to be touched up so that you could see it. The first time I ever saw it was on
Mhm.
VHS, and
Oh yeah.
I remember the scenes when the girl is running through the woods. It was so dark, I couldn't see anything. There was like 15 minutes that was going on with this handheld camera footage in the dark that I was like, I literally don't know what I'm looking at. And now when you look at it today, now that it's sort of been remastered, you actually can see everything that was out there in the woods, and you can see her running and what she's running from and all of that.
Some
It's
of those early transfers were just pointing a video camera at a screen. They were
yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and if it was a movie like that where the rights were pretty loose, where you could just,
Yeah.
they were okay with different companies reproducing it, you're absolutely right. It's not like it was only distributed by Columbia TriStar or something. You
Hmm.
had
Right.
Rhino and Midnight Madness and all these other kinds of places that were doing these really terrible transfers of them and selling them for $3.99, and you didn't know that when you were buying them that it was going to look like crap on your television.
Yeah.
But I love it. It's a great movie. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a great movie too, Becky. That's a really good choice. Well, I think we need to all get together at some point and do like an actual a movie marathon. Maybe you know how they do that thing on Facebook where you can watch like a watch party where we can all watch all 4 of them back to back.
Very cool.
That would be cool. I'm ready.
Like that. I like that.
I'm down. I'll get Brink Stevens to come. I'll get Brink Stevens to come and.
Oh, that would be so cool.
Oh man.
She'll make the popcorn.
Get her to come. Oh man, you bring her onto the show.
Wait, I don't understand. She'll make the popcorn do what?
Anything she wants to.
I suppose.
Pretty much.
Well, Mr. Sechrest, Jason Sechrest, it's been great having you on the show.
It's been a great honor. Thank you.
Anytime. As you can tell, there's pretty much no subject that we're not going to cover. I mean, we're going anywhere. We didn't even go into your Internet Movie Database stuff.
We'll have to come back and cover that for a second issue sometime.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much for having me on.
No problem.
You.
Thank you.
Promise you'll come back.
I will. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right.
See you later. All right, ladies and gentlemen, y'all take it easy. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.